Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto, and in this video we're going to try to get the CBX750 engine back in the bike, and all being well we'll get everything reassembled and see if it'll start and run properly this time. So the next step is getting this engine back in the bike, and in order to do that, what I have to do is basically re-rig it onto my my engine hoist here in a way that I can get it back in the bike. And unfortunately, the way it is rigged right now, it will not fit properly back into the bike. So what I really have to do here is because I need it to be up probably another 10 centimeters anyway, because I need this boom to be level with the top of the engine. So my plan is to lift it up the way it is, block it up some more, and then lower it back down so I can re-rig this boom and restrap everything so I can have the boom dead level with the top of the engine sitting kind of down here, and that'll give me the best chance of getting it back into the motorcycle frame squarely. Now some folks I know will take this and put it on its side, lay the engine on its side and try to maneuver the bike over it. And I did that the first time I did this bike when it was only the frame. So when you've only got the frame to maneuver, it's pretty light. When you've got this whole mess going on, I just don't think it's, for me anyway, I just don't think it would work. I would end up, I'm doing this by myself pretty much, and I just don't think it's going to be an easy way to maneuver it. I think I have a better chance using this. If you haven't got an engine hoist and the luxury of a table like this, a bike lift, then that might be the only way to go for you, is to use the drop the bike on its side method. But I think I'm going to try this and put it back in this way. All right, well I think that's going to be about as high as I need to get it. The boom isn't 100% level, but I think it'll be okay. We'll lift this up. We'll move it back far enough that I can, I'll drop the lift table down, roll the bike on, put the lift table back up, and then hopefully slide this sucker right back in. So here's just a quick thing that I probably should have pointed out when the engine was apart and going back together is this output shaft. This is a carrier bearing or of some sort here, or yeah, like bearing carrier or whatever it's called. This has to fit with this tab up in the kind of the 11 o'clock position up here. These are kind of roughly oriented in this manner. The problem is if you get this oriented incorrectly, you can't move it. This tab will only move in this area. So if you've got this installed over here, the only way to fix that I'm aware of is to split the cases again. So that's something you need to be careful of. All right, bike is up on the lift table. Engine is strapped onto the hoist. So, and I've got the jack underneath here just so I can use that as an extra kind of hand there to maneuver the engine once I get it roughly in place. The challenge with this is going to be, basically, it doesn't seem to matter how I strap this when I take it out or when I put it in. It's the same issue. Because there's so much weight over this side, even when it's kind of strapped across the front here, and I've got another strap underneath, it kind of wants to tilt. As soon as I take weight off, I get about a 2-inch rear to front difference on the height, so it tends to kind of cant this way. So it's going to be a combination of me lifting it, manually moving it back up, and trying to nudge this thing in a little bit at a time without bumping into the frame. So we'll see how that goes. All right, that wasn't too bad. Just kind of shuffled it around, used the jack, and I've loosely got this top engine mount in, or the front engine mount, I should say. So now I'm just going to kind of work my way. I'm going to go to the back, I think, next, and get the top rear engine mounts attached, and then I'll move down to the bottom front. Okay. Rear top engine mount is in. So that's this plate plus that long bolt that runs across the back. There's a spacer on the other side. All right, so the engine mounts are all back in. Top, there's a long bolt there. There's a kind of a mounting plate and a bolt that goes through here. There's a bolt that goes all the way through. There's this mounting plate I had to put back on. And this side is basically just a bolt through here. So they're all in, they're all tightened up, and I can honestly say that that was not as difficult as I expected it to be. Sure, it was fiddly, kind of shuffle here, drop a bit there, but you just kind of keep at it a little bit at a time, and you kind of get there in the end, and it wasn't too bad. So now we can progress with throwing everything back on the engine. And I think one of the first things that I will probably want to tackle, well, we'll check out what I do next in the book, but basically what's left to do is simple stuff like the covers. This output shaft can often be a bit of a pain in the backside, the output shaft cover. It's a pain to get on and off, but you just take your time, it'll get there. Generator has to go back in, the windings and the cover shouldn't be too difficult. Oil pan, all of the oil pipes have to go back in with new seals. And the top end here, the valve train, would be the, I guess I'll say the trickiest. All that's got to be done with everything kind of timed to top dead center. So I've got to go through that process. We'll time the crank, and then we'll put the cams in the right position and go from there. So that's kind of what to expect next. All right, so this is just kind of priming these hydraulic tappets. I have one or two that were just kind of borderline. It says you shouldn't be able to push these down more than 2 millimeters, and this one I could push down a little over 2 millimeters. So basically what I did was I used this little syringe here, and it's got a needle on it. And no, this is not from my drug habit. It's from, I have a horse farm. So occasionally when the vet comes, we have medication that we have to give one of our horses for a number of days following. So that's what this is from. But basically I've got 10W30 engine oil in here. And what I did was I inserted this in the hole, and I fed oil into the tappet to the point where, because if you just drop oil on the top, it really doesn't go inside, so I find the needle works better. And then if you basically, I use this, it came in a set of dental picks that I use. Insert that down, and once you get down all the way, and you can actually kind of push on top of this, and then it actually will activate. There's like a little valve in the bottom that you're going to push, and that allows, I don't want to do it now because I've already done it, but this allows this to move quite freely up and down once you've activated that valve, and it allows the air to come out and the oil to go in. So now that one has been primed. So we'll put a bit of oil in here. Alright, should be enough oil. And right now, if you look at this, I can push it down maybe. This one is close. You kind of have to work at it, but once I activate that valve in there, there it is, right? You can kind of feel it there. It's still a little softer than I like. I'm going to put some more oil in there. There we go. Now that's nice and firm. So what I've done also is I've filled each of these up with a few drops of oil, and now I'm going to just basically insert these back in their particular spots in the head one at a time. I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube on them just so they slide in nice, and once I've done that, I'll probably put the tensioner back in after that. So on the cam chain tensioner, I did buy a new chain guide slipper. I guess it's got a liner in the inside of this thing. The other one was fine, but I didn't really know what kind of shape it was going to be in. And since these were available, I also put a new spring in here. So and then I also bought new pins as well, because I made a mess of these ones when I was taking it apart, so they're not quite as tight anymore as they should be. So that's one thing I didn't need to be falling out. Now that I'm going to put this back together, basically the cam chain has to run, that kind of goes like that in there, and the cam chain has to run inside. So you got to kind of put that in place without bolting it in. Put the cam chain in here, has to run inside there, and then attach this thing to this by putting these pins through. They kind of lock on the back side. There's a flat edge there that kind of stops them moving, and then on this side you put the pin through. Now, because I'm completely paranoid, even the manual tells you be careful you don't drop these pins or clips, so I'm going to put some paper towel in there to try to stop things going down. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some dental floss and tie it to each of these clips. And for any reason, if I fumble those, I've got a much greater chance of them not going into bad places or retrieving them. So that's the plan with that. So the cam tensioner is back in. That was uneventful. Didn't drop any clips or pins, which was good. Bolted it back in place, and I've also put in the rocker arms. I did put a bit of assembly lube on each end of those before I put them in. It doesn't call for it, but more lube is better, I think. So next, I'm going to put this air oil separator cap back on. Then I'm going to set the crank timing to top dead center, and then we'll venture into the reinstallation of the camshafts. So new O-ring for the air oil separator cover, and new crush washer for the bolt, and also you gotta fill that thing up with oil. Might as well fill it up. It's less for the system to be priming when it all kind of goes back together there. So there we have the crank timing set. So the T mark in line with that mark on the case. And now we'll go ahead and install those camshafts. I'm going to lube all the bearing surfaces, make sure they're clean, lube those up, and then we have to install those with the exhaust cam lobes, sorry, the right side cam lobes, the exhaust and the intake facing each other, and also make sure that the timing marks on the sprockets are properly aligned as well. I am struggling. So I've got the intake cam sprocket just sort of generally installed there. And I'm trying now to get the exhaust sprocket installed, but I just can't get enough slack to get that mounted back on that shaft there. I'm like a 1/4 inch out. The tensioner is loosened off, so I should have plenty of loose chain. I did compare the chains before I installed the new one. They seem to be the same size. This one was slightly shorter, of course, because it's not stretched at all, but I didn't think I'd have this much difficulty getting this on. Effectively, my problem here is that, which is what I was worried about and didn't understand when I was taking this thing apart, is how do you actually get this thing to seat down without putting the camshaft caps back on? It doesn't make any sense to me, because basically I can get a little more slack here if I push this down a little bit. Okay, so I'm the idiot. I'm not supposed to put these sprockets on yet. Clearly, I made a mistake here. So I did put this sprocket on with 1 bolt, but I'm going to take that back off and just drop the sprocket off the flange here, and then I put the caps on, and then I can install the chain. So the camshaft holders are back on and tightened down. Okay, got it on. And man, that was a struggle. It's snug in there for sure, which I guess is what you want, but holy cow. Yeah. Next thing, it says align these holes. So fill the defoaming chambers with oil, which I've done. I have to put a bit more in this one. And then it says turn the camshafts to align these holes, which, yeah, probably easier said than done. I may have to put a dowel on here and just kind of tap it around a little bit without knocking the thing back off the flange. Yeah, this one is off. You can tell these are not quite level, so these kind of need to be rotated this way a little bit, and this one would need to be rotated this way slightly. So I think we got it. Again, it was just a bit of a struggle, a bit of a fight, but everything is aligned exactly as it was before it came apart. On the other side, we're aligned with top dead center. And yeah, everything looks to be okay. I'm going to, I've taken it through 1 revolution. The tensioner is re-engaged. This is a lot less sloppy than it was to begin with. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do it for a few more revolutions, make sure I'm comfortable, everything's moving smoothly, and then I can put the guide back on the top, oil pipes. I have to retighten crisscross pattern all of the bolts here, and make sure I don't miss any steps along the way. So the guide is back on the top, the oil pipes are back on, everything has been torqued, crisscross pattern in 2 to 3 steps. So I've cranked it over a few times by hand, everything seems to be smooth. All right, just get the bolts snugged up for the oil pan, and then I can get the oil lines all reattached. So there's one oil line has to attach here, and then the other one attaches up here on the crankcase. So the oil pump drive gear is back in. This gear is also back in, and I put there's a a bushing or a sleeve there for the clutch that's gone back on. Now I have to reinstall the clutch, and I seem to remember this being a little tricky. You definitely have to make sure the crank is positioned that it's not sticking out here in order to get the clutch in. The gears on this ring gear here has to mesh with this gear also over here, and at the same time these pins have to mesh into these holes on the back of the clutch as well. So that tends to take a little bit of time, I recall. So what actually helps is if you reach in with a screwdriver and move the oil pump drive gear at the same time, and you kind of push on this until it kind of goes in a little bit further. Now all the gears in there appear to be meshed properly. I think that's good. When I turn the crank, all the gears move, including the oil pump gear. And these are the things that, when you're not a professional mechanic, this is the kind of stuff that keeps me awake. Ready with the torque wrench. There's locking agent on the nut there, and I'm going to lock the back wheels in 6th gear, and that way I can get the right torque on it. Carb boots are back on, and the coils are on. The drive sprocket cover and the hydraulic clutch are back on. So basically it's just kind of, now I'm working my way back around everything, just popping everything back on, fastening everything up. So here's a tip when you're reattaching the cable for the starter motor. I've seen people a number of occasions just kind of stick a wrench or a socket on here and just start cranking. What can happen is this starts to seat down on the clamp here. It'll actually start to spin that stud, and it'll potentially damage and break off the wire inside. So what I like to do is I have a very thin wrench, and I like to hold that stud locking nut steady underneath, and then once that's held, I'll put this one on top, and then I'll tighten it, keeping this one in this position, making sure that this doesn't move where my thumb is here, and then I'm only cranking on the top one. So there's a tip. It'll potentially save you from damaging your starter motor wiring inside. The carbs are hooked back up, but they're not mounted yet. So what I'm going to do is, these rubbers are in generally good condition, but they're not as soft and supple as I would like. And I had actually meant to soak them in alcohol and wintergreen oil, which will soften them up quite a bit, but I forgot to do that. So instead I'm just going to warm them up a little bit with the heat gun, and then I'm going to use some rubber or silicone grease on the inside just to help them in. My clutch cover and the right side crank cover back on, and so the only things left to do is to put on the exhaust system, which is a giant pain in the backside. I'm not putting the plugs back in yet, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank it over with the plugs out once I get some oil in it. I'm out of oil. I need to get some more oil, so that's going to delay me a little bit until I get into town to buy some. And yeah, I want to just sort of prime the system, so I'll crank it for a while with the plugs out, and then that way I can just get a bit of oil flowing before I put spark and fuel to it. Spark plugs are just in the caps. They're not screwed in at the moment. I don't like running CDI ignition bikes or cranking them over even without plugs in the caps. Some electronics are sensitive to that. You can actually damage the CDI box if there's no plugs in the caps. Oil is in the crankcase. The plugs are out but in the caps, and I'm going to turn it on, see if we get power, which we do. And I'm just going to crank it and first of all make sure it turns over. So, yep. So we got, it's cranking, we have spark. Right, so the dry cranking, I say dry, I mean no fuel, plugs out, seem to go okay. And the main purpose of that was just to get a little bit of oil flowing, and not to have to put too much strain on the battery while I was doing that. So yeah, pumped a bit of oil through it that way. Plugs are now in, caps are on. I plugged up this vacuum line just because there's no point in feeding additional air into that particular carburetor manifold. And I've got fuel up in here, so I'm going to turn that on. And we'll see. We'll fill up the carb bowls. And then we'll just double check for leaks. There shouldn't be any issues there because I didn't have the carburetors apart this time. It should be okay based on everything last time. So they're now full, so we'll give it a try here. Moment of truth. Battery is not doing well. So let's put the charger pack on, push the pack. Let's see how we do. Bad for first run, I will take that all day long. Okay, this is a hot start. Very happy. She's running quite nicely. Not too bad. Not too bad. Probably use the idle knocking down a little bit, but aside from that, got a bit of oil residue burning off here and there. But all things considered, I got to be pleased with that. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and once the bodywork goes back on this thing, then we're going to call it done. Move on to the next project. Stay tuned.